All we've got to do now is to start pumping.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome into a very special draft edition of the Fully Inflated Football podcast. Today we're going to be diving into my final two position groups for my top 10 positional rankings with the interior offensive and defensive line. Thank you so much for joining me, whether you're here on YouTube or for the audio version of the podcast. Going to be a fun one. I do have some housekeeping before we get started. First off, I want to remind you guys to take out your phones, set a little reminder that I will be live here on YouTube for my live stream of the entire NFL draft. That is all 3 days. If you're sick of ESPN saying every pick's great and blah, 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 I'm going to tell you like it is. If I think a pick sucks, I'm going to react to it. If a pick really gets me fired up, I'm going to bring that energy. So we'll have that. We'll have grades, reactions, live highlights. It's the 3 best days of the year, other than maybe opening kickoff for the NFL weekend. But can't wait. See you guys there. I know you got a lot of options to consume the draft. I appreciate you spending that time with me. I really do. On top of that, I want to remind you that this show, this channel, would not be possible without my amazing supporters on Patreon. So first off, shout out to all of you that have been on Patreon, enjoying the exclusive content there, and everyone that has signed up recently. The enthusiasm for the draft has been awesome. And I want to remind you guys that you won't just support my channel through Patreon, but you'll also get exclusive content. If you enjoy my draft content, you'll love what's up there on Patreon right now. We've got film breakdowns, going through some of these players. You'll get access to my full draft rankings, closing in on having that finally published, like 350 players. Additionally, we are getting into 7-round mock drafts for every division. We've got 4 out of the 8 done. Going to have 2 more coming up tonight, most likely. So lots of exclusive content there. And lastly, a reminder that this show is brought to you by SeatGeek. If you are not buying your tickets on SeatGeek, I do believe you're doing yourself a disservice. It's the best user interface, you get the best prices, and you can support my channel by using promo code FranchiseGuy in the process. So you're going to basketball, playoff games, baseball in full swing as appropriate, I suppose. NFL schedule release coming up here in a few weeks. So if you're buying tickets, going out enjoying the summer, now that the pandemic seems to be in our rearview mirror, do it on SeatGeek. Promo code FranchiseGuy. You'll save $20 on your first purchase. And lastly, please do hit that like button if you're up on YouTube. Leave a review if you're listening to the audio version of this Fully Inflated Football podcast, wherever you get your podcast. And thank you for hearing me out. Let's go ahead and talk some ball, starting with the interior offensive lineman. And no fancy graphics, no highlights here in this video. I just ran out of time. You guys, it's a one-man show here, so not going to be quite the quality of my other top 10 breakdowns. I do encourage you to go check those out, but the analysis is all going to be here. So let's get into it. Starting at the top, we are actually going to go 1 through 10 for whatever reason, but let's start at the top. Number 1 for me is Zion Johnson out of Boston College, not Tyler Linderbaum, who's going to be most people's number 1. Not that I don't like Linderbaum, it's just that I am that much higher on Zion Johnson. So there's really nothing to be overly concerned about with Zion Johnson. Everyone on this list has something that you look at and you're like, oh, he's got to improve his technique. Oh, his anchor's not very good. He's not very athletic out of his stance. Zion Johnson checks every single box, including off field. Like, this dude is a double major in like computer science and something else. Super cool guy off the field. So you've got that going for him as well. But I mean, man, if you just run through it in the run game, he can fit any any run scheme because he's incredibly quick off the ball. His get off is exceptional. He's powerful. Like, you know how Aaron Donald is, a big reason he's so good is because he's 6'1" and he's got long arms and he's just lower than everybody. Now, Aaron Donald's great at a lot of different things, but his ability to be shorter than everyone while still having a unique strength at what would most people be considered undersized. Aaron Donald has full play strength for a smaller interior defensive lineman. I would compare just that little trait to Zion Johnson. He looks like a smaller guard. He looks like someone that you should be able to move in the run game or run through in pass protection. This guy is rocked up, 315 pounds at about 6'2 and a half, put up 32 bench reps, which is the most out of anybody in this entire draft class. Just kidding. Jason Poe out of Mercer put up 34. He's 28th on my board. So not only is he a great athlete for wide zone blocking schemes, he can climb to the second level on double teams for inside zone, but you can run him like head up and expect him to handle one-on-one blocks in gap schemes as well. He's a phenomenal run blocker, scheme independent. And then we talked a little bit about his pass protection, about how he's just rocked up. You're not getting through him, but he's got the pass protection technique and the agility and the footwork on the inside to thrive as well. Snap after snap after snap. It's extending his arms. He's got almost 34-inch arms, which are let's just say it's towards the top of this class. There's a couple guys with 35 inches, but 34-inch arms is very long for a guard, especially at his height. So he's coming in low, but he's got just these long, accurate arms that he just sticks dudes inside their chest, and then he just mirrors with his feet. Left, right, wherever you want to go, he's got full control. He's one of the most complete guard prospects I've ever seen since going back to like Quentin Nelson. He's a top 5 player for me in this draft, excluding positional value. He's by far, I think, my favorite prospect in this class, other than maybe Daxton Hill. But I would be considering him, in the top 10 to 12 picks. And if you're able to steal him in the 20s, my God, that is an absolute bargain. Now my number 2 interior offensive lineman is Tyler Linderbaum out of Iowa. And again, it's no slight to him. I also think he's a true first-round player, someone that is worthy of going in the top 20 picks. But I do think there are some actual knocks on Linderbaum because he is smaller. He's about the same height, 6'2". He's actually a little shorter, but he only has 31-inch arms, which, 3 3/4 inch length difference in your arms, that's pretty significant. If you want to talk about being able to get your hands inside, be able to use that to sustain blocks in the run game, but also to just be able to gain control of your blocker as a pass protector and not get overwhelmed by these lengthy bull rushers at the next level. So he's shorter, he's got shorter arms, and he's, a good 15 pounds lighter. So I do think there's questions about how he's going to be able to handle one-on-one power rushers at the next level. And I also think his get off and mobility is where he becomes an elite run blocker. So when he's asked to run these wide zone offenses, stretch runs specifically, he's able to seal that edge on a reach block, and that's when he really uses his leverage to his advantage. He's a former wrestler, so he has excellent core strength. And when he's on the move, he's just naturally able to sustain blocks as they're trying to get across his face and make a play on the perimeter there for that outside zone. So for that reason, I do think, he's a scheme-dependent, center-only prospect. And that's why you talk about Linderbaum potentially falling in the draft, because you have to need a center to draft him in the first round. Center alone is already viewed as a more replaceable, lesser valued position around the league. Look at how like Creed Humphrey fell last year. If you just look at how centers are paid, it's just not, it's towards the bottom as far as all the different positions. So not only is he, he's scheme dependent, he's a center, and he's, a little undersized. So I don't know. I still really like Tyler Linderbaum, but there's a very real situation where he's going to fall because there's only so many teams picking in the first round that are going to be considering him. But if you get him in that right system, he's going to be a potential all-pro caliber center. I'm not trying to talk down on him. He's going to come in on my overall rankings. He's the fifth overall player in this class, just off of positional, not positional value, just off of grade alone. Zion Johnson's third. So you're talking about two of the five best players in this entire class, in my opinion, excluding positional value. These guys aren't going in the top 10. But then you have a little bit of a drop off to Kenyon Green, who's my number 3 guy. I still have a first to a second round grade on Kenyon Green. The thing with Green is he's just not the athlete that the other guys are. I don't think he's going to be a potential Pro Bowler or an All Pro. And again, even we talked about center being a diminished valued position. Guard is very similar. So, it's got to be the right spot for him if you're going to take him in the first round. But I think he's very much plug and play, especially at guard. I have very few criticisms of his technique, strength, get off as a run blocker. I think he's a good enough athlete for any system, though he's not going to be an elite reach blocker and stuff. He doesn't fly out of his stance like Zion or Linderbaum or even some other guys a little bit further down the board. And pardon the neighbor's dog barking. We're just going to have to truck through this thing here. But yeah, I think wide zone blocking schemes, he'll be serviceable, but you might pass on him for someone a little bit further down the board that fits that system a little bit better. But if you're running a lot of duo and you want him running double teams, working single one-on-one in power, even as a puller, he's good at headhunting and taking down linebackers at the second level as a puller. He's going to be very good in the run game. Pass protection, he's still a little bit of a work in progress. He is the youngest of these top 3 guys. He's got very strong vice grip arms and his anchor is very good. I just worry a little bit about the kind of mirroring ability in his feet and ability to handle stunts and pick up some of the quicker stuff he's going to see on the interior at the next level. But for the most part, he's a very sound offensive line prospect that will probably go in the top 35 to 40 picks of this draft. Then we have Cole Strange climbing up the boards here to my number 4 offensive line, interior offensive line grades. And he was one of the few offensive linemen that really stood out to me at the Senior Bowl. And I didn't realize that everyone else was enamored by him as well, because I hadn't really heard of the guy. And I was like, well, this guy looks pretty solid. I don't know how athletic he is and how big his upside is going to be, but he didn't really lose a lot of reps. He was aggressive and physical in the run game, and he really had just stones for hands. Like when he was in pass protection, boom, like rep over most of the time, just annihilating guys getting inside their chest. I do think the foot speed and some of the pass protection technique wasn't quite of what we saw with like Zion Johnson, but still very good. But after the Senior Bowl, I was like, oh, this guy looks like 3rd, 4th round pick, kind of a sleeper out of Chattanooga, just a high floor potential starter on the offensive line. Well, turns out this dude is a freaky athlete. He ran a 5.03 flat 40, which is very good. 3-cone shuttle, broad jump, 3-cone shuttle, very solid. Broad jump of 120. That is the biggest broad jump in this class by a decent margin, actually, if we sort this. Yes, the Cam Jurgens out of Nebraska was at 119, and then the next one down is Luke Wattenberg at 113. So you're looking at a guy that can really get out of his stance in a hurry and with a lot of power as well. So that is a ton of value in that. 31 bench reps as well, just behind Zion Johnson. So he has all of the athletic tools. As I mentioned, he's got good enough pass protection technique with some room to improve. I have no concerns about his run block ability. I think he can block in any system because he is a great athlete. This is a smart guy off the field and out of Chattanooga, a tough guy that brings, you want guys that are tough and want to get dirty in the trenches because this is not a glamorous position, and Cole Strange is that guy. So I think he brings an incredibly high floor, scheme-independent guy And I just have very few questions. The other nice thing about him is he looked pretty good at center as well at the Senior Bowl. So he can give you 3-position versatility on the inside. Then I have Dylan Parham at number 5, who is another player that really stood out to me at the Senior Bowl and has been able to sustain that hype with good workout grades. This is one of the faster interior offensive linemen, a 4.93 40 time. He has the highest 10-yard split, which is probably the most important measurable for these guys. So a 1.66 10-yard split is elite in this class. Looks like there's actually one other player I have charted with something better than that. That is Zach Thomas out of San Diego State. His athleticism shows. He's a little bit lighter though, but similar measurables to Zion Johnson. 6'2", 310 pounds, 33.5-inch arms. I will say he doesn't have the raw strength that Zion Johnson has, and I think pass protection technique isn't quite as polished as Zion Johnson. But if you miss out on Zion in the first round and you want a guy that can compete to start, especially in a wide zone offense because he is such a great athlete off the ball, someone that also has center flexibility, second, third round for Dylan Parham is a no-brainer. I just had him as my dream fit for the San Francisco 49ers at the end of the second round. I think that's a really good spot for him to go. I think he's going to provide an immediate starter with some upside at the next level. Then we're talking about a little bit of a different type of player here with my number 6 interior offensive lineman. Someone that's actually a college tackle, and we're going to start to get into some of these college tackles that I see as more guards at the next level. But Darian Kinnard out of Kentucky, I do think needs to play guard at the next level because his foot speed is just so poor. I think he can get by at tackle as a backup, but I just think he has good starting qualities if they were to slide him in at guard. He's a monster. He's 6'5". He's slimmed down to 325 pounds, 35.5-inch arms. But as I mentioned, he's just not a good athlete. One of the worst 40 times in this class, 3-cone under 8 seconds. The broad jump very low, only 20 bench reps as well. He's not the freaky athlete that he might look like at 6'5", 325 pounds. He just doesn't move well enough for me to say that guy's a starting tackle at the next level. But he is incredibly powerful. He leans into his mass quite literally. He does lean quite a bit. Some of the more technical pass rushers will be able to hit him with some punch and pull moves and get him off balance. That's another reason I don't love him at tackles, because of that leaning. He can get by with that a little bit more at guard at the next level. But when he can get his hands on you, and he does it more often than not because he's got those 35-inch and a half arms, he deploys very well. He's going to move you. So in a power run game where you can get him on double teams to just drive the pile and clean out defensive linemen, and just work up with someone else's help, man, he is going to be a people mover at guard at the next level. Now, he's a little more scheme dependent. There's all these wide zone offenses in the league that want really good athletes at the position. You're probably not thinking about a Darian Kinnard. But if you're, say, the Patriots or, the Saints, potentially it'd be a scheme fit. The Eagles come to mind, the Jaguars. There's teams that don't run quite as much of that moving offensive line play where you want them getting lateral. You more want him head up as a people mover. He's going to be a good fit. So I do think he's a guard, ranking number 6 there for Darian Kinnard. And then number 7 is right back to these great athletes on the inside, and it's Cameron Jurgens out of Nebraska. He's declaring as a redshirt junior here, and very much a work in progress. He reminds me almost a spitting image of Matt Hennessy, who came out of, I think it was Temple 2 years ago. He's now the starting center for the Atlanta Falcons, had a decent year last year. But a guy that just very clearly has the athletic tools to be a wide zone center at the next level, but just did not play a lot of good football in college. Was mostly flashes as far as lead blocking on screens or showing that ability as a reach blocker from that center position. Similar to Tyler Linderbaum, he is a scheme-specific, likely center-only prospect at 6'2.5", 300 pounds. So only so many teams are going to be considering him. But for example, I had him as a dream fit to the Miami Dolphins, who still need a good center, and they're switching to Mike McDaniels' wide zone offense down there in Miami. They pick in the 3rd round, which is the round grade I have on Cameron Jurgens. So I think that'd be a great spot for him to compete for a center job, and eventually by year 2 would win it out. So another one of these athletic wide zone centers, and they keep coming. There's a lot of them in this class. I promise you, I think I can promise you it's not just a stylistic preference for me. I do think these guys are, it's just a deep class for, that system where fortunately half the teams in the league are running it right now. So good time for a lot of teams to need a move blocking interior offensive lineman. But anyway, my number 8 guy is Alec Lindstrom out of Boston College. And pretty much everything we just said about Cam Jurgens applies to Alec Lindstrom. I have these guys very tightly graded, a 6.22 grade for Jurgens and a 6.21 grade for Lindstrom. I think Lindstrom's a little bit more experienced. He is the brother of Chris Lindstrom for the Atlanta Falcons. A little more experienced, a little more polished. He's got a whole year on Cam Jurgens of developing there at Boston College, right next to Zion Johnson. But I will say that Lindstrom is not quite the athlete that Cam Jurgens is. I think he's a B athlete at the position. I think Cam Jurgens is an A athlete, by the way, he's really athletic, by the way. But yeah, another moving, undersized center that you're going to worry a little bit about the power, about the size, one-on-one, but in the right system, he's going to be an effective run blocker and a technician of a pass protector who you just probably want to protect a little bit if you're going up against the Akeem Hicks in his prime, Kenny Clark, Chris Jones, like these dominant bull rushing interior guys. Guys like Lindstrom, Jurgens, Parham, Linderbaum even, you're going to want to protect them with double teams against those types of players, which is a little bit of a limitation, but for the most part, they're going to be pretty sound. Then my number 9 interior offensive lineman is another converted tackle, and it's Sean Ryan. Ryan's tape was a little bit frustrating for me because there's a lot of flashes where you can see basically why he felt the need to declare as a true junior here out of UCLA. He's big. He's, almost 6'5". He's 320 pounds. And when he gets his hands on you, you aren't going anywhere. Very similar to Darian Kinnard. Like, his raw strength is very impressive. There was even reps against like Kayvon Thibodeau where he was able to lock him up, anchor down, and Thibodeau was going nowhere. Thibodeau got his against him as well, though. The thing with Ryan is his foot speed's terrible at tackle, so you're going to protect that at guard a little bit better, and his arm length is poor, 32.5 inches. So unlike Darian Kinnard, who ranked a little bit higher here, who Kinnard I think can actually hold up at tackle, I don't think Ryan can hold up at tackle at the next level. He's very clearly a guard to me. Now, I had to bump him up a little bit after his testing because he came out with a 110-inch broad jump and a 34-inch vertical with a pretty solid 10-yard split. And I didn't see a lot of explosiveness from him at tackle. But again, 2-point stance, just a different position. I love the idea of knowing that he has more physical explosiveness in there. So if you can really rework his ability to fly off the ball from a 3-point stance at guard, I think you're going to see a much better people mover at the next level from the inside of your offensive line. But there's just a lot of projecting to do there. It's obviously not something he's played a lot of. So technique-wise, stunt recognition, all that stuff might take some time to get up to speed. I think his anchor will be just fine. But yeah, just maybe a little bit more of a project on the inside, but definitely has starting potential. I have a 3rd to a 4th round grade on Sean Ryan. And then my number 10 is another tackle convert here, Jamari Sawyer out of Georgia. And an interesting projection because, again, he played tackle. He's a balanced athlete, I would say. He's got good strength. He's got good athleticism, but not great in either department. I did really like his just kind of strength as a run blocker. I thought he sustained blocks really well. I thought his anchor was pretty solid. So he just, to me, needs to improve his technique and his foot speed. But again, moving into guard will protect him very much. And the reason I don't see him as a tackle is, number one, he's 6'3", 320 pounds, 34-inch arms. And with that lack of foot speed, I do think he needs to move into guard. But he does provide some of that tackle flexibility to be, someone that can step in. Maybe something like what we've seen from, his name's, this is going to drive me crazy. I need to look this up. For the Patriots, out of Michigan, Michael Onwenu. I got it. Yeah, Michael Onwenu, he's a guard. He's 6'2", like 335 pounds. His foot speed isn't great, but he's been able to play tackle for the Patriots. Now, Onwenu's a freaking monster. He's a really good player. I don't know if Sawyer is quite as strong of a run blocker, but Onwenu did go like 5th, 6th round to the Patriots and has had a really nice projection to the next level. So just to recap here, that's our top 10. We have Jamari Sawyer at 10 with a 3rd to a 4th round grade. Sean Ryan out of UCLA at 9 with a 3rd to a 4th round grade. Alec Lindstrom out of Boston College for number 8 with a 3rd round grade. Cam Jurgens, number 7 out of Nebraska with a 3rd round grade. Darian Kinnard out of Kentucky at 6 with a 2nd to a 3rd round grade. Dylan Parham out of Memphis at 5 with a 2nd to a 3rd round grade. Cole Strange out of Chattanooga at 4 with a 2nd round grade. Kenyon Green out of Texas A&M at 3 with a 1st to a 2nd round grade. Tyler Linderbaum at 2 with a 1st round grade. And Zion Johnson at the top there. And there are my top 10 interior offensive linemen. Let's keep this thing rolling with my top 10 interior defensive linemen. And I'm going to be completely honest, this position group stinks. It is a literal asshole in this class. Man, it was rough to get through these guys because I don't think you're getting a lot of day one impacts from this group, which is really surprising considering there's a lot of super seniors in this class because of COVID. A lot of guys got an extra year of eligibility. You would expect a lot of these guys to make the most of it and kind of shine as these big 23, 24-year-old defensive tackles that are ready to come in and defend the run right away. I was so underwhelmed, and it is a terrible year to need a defensive tackle. Honestly, I think there's 4 players in this class that you can feel good about as day one contributors, and another couple of guys that I think can get there. But it's a rough group. It is a rough group. Probably the thinnest, worst position group I've seen since I've been doing this. So just keep that in mind. And let's count down from the bottom, because as I mentioned, this is just not a very good class. So we'll get through the bottom, and then we'll talk about some of those more intriguing guys towards the top. Number 10 for me is Chris Hinton out of Michigan. For me, this is, he's not a good player. He's young, though. He's 21 years old. This is hoping he can develop into a better player than the other options in the 5th to the 6th round, which is what you're really talking about with Christopher Hinton. His development at Michigan just wasn't really there. You can see why he was a 5-star prospect. He's got a loaded base. He's extremely strong. If you can say one thing about him, it's that when he does play with proper technique and he can get his hands inside, he is really consistent at shedding blocks in those situations. So he's young, built, and good at shedding blocks. But if you want to talk about playing disciplined, seeing the run, and just any sort of technique as a pass rusher whatsoever, it's completely missing. His development at Michigan was definitely underwhelming and a little bit of a red flag given his 5-star pedigree, but he's still young. He's declaring early. And I think if you have a good defensive line coach, you can put him in there as a 4th or a 5th defensive tackle and hope you can bring along his raw traits. But even starting with my number 10 player here, you're talking about a 5th to a 6th round grade. I do not think he's a particularly good prospect. Then I have Matthew Butler out of Tennessee. He's fine. He's a decent athlete, 6'3.5", 300 pounds. He's got good arm length. I think he's fine against the run. He's relatively strong. He's sort of consistent shedding blocks and holding his ground. As a pass rusher, he has solid get off. He's got some power in there. I didn't walk away like, oh my God, this Matthew Butler guy is so sweet. Like, we got to get our hands on him. I think he's a 3rd or a 4th defensive tackle. If you're lucky, he'll continue to get stronger and really work on his technique, but he is, a redshirt senior coming out. He's an older prospect, a late bloomer as well. I think he stands out above a lot of other guys in this class, but man, I'm not like super excited drafting Matthew Butler. Haskell Garrett out of Ohio State, another guy that's fine, does some nice stuff. He's really quick. I think he's one of the more instinctive run defenders in this class. He's kind of got a nose for the football. When he's got bodies all around him, he's kind of able to use his small frame to kind of sneak in the backfield and make impressive plays. He's able to use some of that quickness and power as a rusher. But at 6'1.5", 300 pounds, under 32-inch arms, not a fantastic athlete. And a redshirt senior coming out, a grad senior, never really took that next step at Ohio State. I don't see him becoming anything more than he was at Ohio State, which is just a good 3rd or 4th defensive tackle that can come in, do a little bit of everything, but not shine in any one department. So that's your, I guess, 8 through 10. I got a 4th to a 5th round grade on Haskell Garrett. And then DeMarvin Leal's my number 7. He's an interesting player. He's a hybrid defensive end, edge type. For a guy that was once mocked as a top 10 player, a 1st round player, it does go to show you how much like media driven hype or projected hype can carry a guy for a long time, because his tape is incredibly underwhelming. He's not a great athlete. He had poor testing numbers, and he doesn't look overly athletic on the field. He's a classic tweener. He's 6'4", 285 pounds, and it's just tough to know exactly where he's going to play. I think 4-3 defensive end, 3-4 defensive end is kind of where he's projecting. If he's playing 3-4 defensive end, I think he's a little bit too light to defend the run well from that spot. If he's playing 4-3 defensive end, he's not going to be fast enough to set the edge. So there's a constant trade-off there. I compare him to Kingsley Keke, who came out of Texas A&M. I think he was a 4th round pick for the Green Bay Packers, was a decent rotational 3-4 defensive end, but ended up getting in trouble off the field and wasn't talented enough for them to keep him through that. So I think he's now down in Houston and kind of playing that same, kind of 4-3 end rotational role. He has such a long way to go with his technique, and frankly, to reshape his entire body for him to become a starter. I think he could do that. He's still young. He's a true junior coming out. He's got the frame to either, trim down and be more of a true edge, or add muscle and be maybe more of a dependable run defender from the interior. But that doesn't always happen. I do have a 4th round grade on him. He's an interesting piece if you have kind of that hybrid role for him. But I don't see a whole lot of upside there, and he has a long ways to go. So I'm not crazy about him. My number 6 is Fedarian Mathis, who I guess you could throw his name in the hat as far as an early contributor, as like a 4th defensive tackle. His run defense is solid. He does have longer arms, 34.5 inches. He's full-sized. He's played at Bama. He's tough. I think he's fine, but not a great athlete, not a great pass rusher. He's got some power, he's got some get off. I think you can put him out there on any down and he's not going to get lost. But another guy, a redshirt senior coming out, never looked overly dominant in college. I don't project him to become dominant in any one department at the next level. I see him as a rotational player. Now into the top 5, we can change our tone a little bit because there are some good players in this class. There are going to be some starters in this class. It's just so incredibly thin. So my number 5 defensive tackle is Neil Farrell out of LSU. And for me, Neil Farrell is a spitting image of one of my favorite players in the NFL, or at least someone that I'm a lot higher on, and that's Tim Settle, who entered the league as a 6th-round pick out of Virginia Tech. But I loved how strong he was in his upper body, how powerful he was with his arms, how disciplined he was against the run. And then he pairs all of that with actually really skinny, quick feet. And if you think all the way back to Vince Wilfork, Settle and Neil Farrell are not going to be Vince Wilfork. But because Vince carried all of that mass and power in his upper body, like just go Google an image of Vince Wilfork. It's ridiculous. Like he has really skinny legs. So he's actually able to move a little bit and kind of sidestep blocks. And it helps him as a block shedder in a lot of times. And I see a little bit of that in Neil Farrell. He's got a lot of experience at LSU. I think he's a more powerful, disciplined run defender than anybody we've talked about to this point. Comes in at 6'4", 328 pounds. And he even has a little bit of ability to get after the quarterback. What do I have in my notes? I think he has one little rush move that he uses. He's got a swim move. He's got a nice swim move that he's just kind of, if you've got this big flubbery body just kind of bouncing around you, he just kind of has quick feet and a swim move that he can actually win one-on-one occasionally as a rusher. So he can get after the quarterback a little bit on 3rd down, just like Tim Settle has shown to do as well. So Neil Farrell, I've got a 3rd to a 4th round grade. He's my 5th defensive tackle in this class. He's not a great athlete. 8'4", 3-cone, 21.5-inch vertical jump, 18 reps on the bench. Like, he's got his physical limitations. He's a big, slow, pretty much nose tackle, but he's better than the rest of this group. Number 4 is probably, honestly, the highest upside player in this class. Other than, I guess, Jordan Davis has his own upside as a run defender, but upside as a pass rusher, I would say. Perion Winfrey out of Oklahoma. And he's very similar to his edge counterpart in Nick Bonito. Like, they need a defensive line coach there at Oklahoma because these guys had no idea what they're doing. Perion Winfrey looked to me like he's Googled a lot of really good interior pass rushers in the NFL. And you could see, like, he'll try a swim, he'll try a long arm bull rush, he'll try a rip and a spin. Like, he's got a lot of different moves. He just has no plan or consistency with any of them and really doesn't seem to have a good game plan as far as, like, when to use it, of course, and who to use those moves against. So it's all in there. It just needs to come together. His athleticism's off the charts, man. He's got an incredible first step, ran a 4.89 40. You can see it. He's got 35+ inch arms. He could be dangerous if developed correctly. But for me, I think in year 1, you kind of need to just line him up as a 3 technique, as a 3rd down pass rusher, and just almost tell him, like, you're either going to use your get off. I want you to just shoot this gap. We're going to stunt around you, or we're going to stunt you up and scheme you open. Or have a really nice plan to be like, look, this left guard really struggles against spin moves, or this guy's going to have a hard time handling your 35-inch arms. So just bull rush through this guy. He's going to be a matchup 3 technique pass rush specialist in year 1. He sucks against the run. He's one of the worst run defenders in this entire class, if not the absolute worst. He's upright. He doesn't find the ball. He's a weaker player. He doesn't have a ton of play strength. He can't see the field on early downs. He's just going to get just cleared out. I compare him, though, to Malik Jackson, who's had some really good seasons in the NFL for the Eagles, for the Jags, and he's done just that. He's been at his best on third down because of his get off and ability to get after the quarterback. I think Perrion Winfrey can get there, and that's worth to me a second or a third round pick. But I do think when you draft him, you have him in the understanding that he's not going to help you in the run game, and you're going to have to really scheme this guy up early on and hope the development comes. Then we get to Travis Jones out of UConn, and I need to revisit my grade on him. I've seen a little bit more on him. I haven't gotten in to bump this up a little bit, but I'm actually pretty dang close to pushing him above Devonte Wyatt, who's my number 2 guy. But I love Travis Jones because he's every bit of a nose tackle. First, second down, I have no doubts. This guy is going to hold up against the run. Almost a spitting image of Falorenzu Fadukasi, who's been an underrated defensive tackle for the Jets for a long time. Fadukasi came out of UConn, was Travis Jones' predecessor there, and just got paid a $3 or $30 million contract to play for the Jags. And I think Travis Jones is almost identical, not just because he's got really good athleticism for a big guy, he's really strong and disciplined against the run, but he does a little bit to get after the quarterback as well. He's got kind of rare quickness and athleticism for such a big guy. He's got some power. He has real hammers for hands. So as a pass rusher, you can see his ability to push the pocket. I am going to be bumping Travis Jones up to a first to a second round grade. Right now I have him as a 2, but I think he's a better player than that. And the main reason I need to change that is because I saw how bad the depth is in this class. I think you can justify taking Travis Jones at the end of the first round when you know basically your only other option, assuming Wyatt and Jordan Davis are gone, there's like 2 players that you think can help you in the run game early on. Neil Farrell and Fedarian Mathis, but Fedarian Mathis is a step below Farrell. I think you can spend a first-round pick on Travis Jones. I think you can play 3 technique because he is a little bit quicker. He's a good athlete. He ran a 4.92, by the way, which is crazy for how big he is. He's 6'4", 325. I really like Travis Jones. I wouldn't be surprised if I actually push him above Devonte Wyatt because he's, I think, 2 years younger. I think he's a more powerful player. He didn't, he did it without leaning on, all these elite talents around him like he did at Georgia. And now there's some potential off-field character stuff I need to kind of look into with Devonte Wyatt. But for now, we've got Devonte Wyatt at 2, and these 2 guys are really close. Both first to a second-round grade. Wyatt's a little bit more of a quicker athlete and a better pass rusher. He's really good on stunts, which that's kind of the theme of the day for the Georgia defensive line. A lot of these guys weren't really winning one-on-one. It was more stunting these guys up. But I do think Devonte Wyatt showed really good pass rush moves on film, and he dominated at the Senior Bowl as well. When I saw him put together a cross chop, which is Aaron Donald's go-to move, that to me was like, okay, this guy gets it as a pass rusher. The cross chop for an interior defensive lineman requires the full package. It requires just tape study and work on your technique. It is a very technical move to pull off, but it also requires get off, arm strength, core balance, and quickness and acceleration. So for the YouTube audience, what this basically is, a cross chop is a counter or a different version of a normal chop. If you're just running a chop move, you're going to be chopping from the right side to get the offensive lineman's arms down and away, and then you're going to probably be ripping or swimming over the top of that once they're off balance. That's kind of your typical chop. A cross chop is you actually take that right arm all the way over to the opposite side. So that alone requires get off, core balance, because you're going to be getting in the hitting the chest while you do that. You got to come all the way over, and you're going to rip backwards the other side, which requires strength to push the guy into an unbalanced position, and then you have them in a place where you can use your other arm. You need length to pull this off as well, because you have that other arm coming over. And if you're following with me, when you're in this position that I'm in right now, that's not a full body look here, but when you're in this position, all of your momentum's pushing backwards. So you need like strength and acceleration in your legs and core balance in your upper body to continue accelerating through that and bend to get onto the other side. That move is what's made Aaron Donald probably the best player in NFL history. So when I saw Devontae Wyatt pull that off at the Senior Bowl, it's like, okay, now we're talking. Because if you can pull off a cross chop, you can pull off any pass rush move at the next level. So that's really exciting. I think he's fine against the run. He's a little bit on the smaller side. I don't think it's going to be a problem. I would just say he projects as an above average college prospect against the run and will probably be an average run defender at the next level. I do compare Devontae Wyatt to David Onyemata, who's another kind of underrated player, but he's a hell of a player for the Saints. Good pass rusher and a solid run defender, as I would say a low-end number one starter for them on the inside. And I think Devontae Wyatt can give you something like that right away. I need to do some investigation into these reported off-field issues. Sometimes there's nothing there. Sometimes it's something concerning. But yeah, Wyatt's my number 2 for now. I think Travis Jones is right behind him. Both of those guys I'd be comfortable taking really any time after the 20th pick. It is just worth noting that Devontae Wyatt's 24 years old and didn't break out until his final year at Georgia when he was surrounded by elite talent. So there's some stuff to kind of sort through there. But then number 1 is Jordan Davis. He's the cleanest projection in this group. He's a freak, 6'6", 340 pounds, comes out and runs a 4.7, 840, a 1.63 10-yard split, though. That is what really gets you intrigued by Jordan Davis. So to put that in perspective, the only other player in this class with a better 10-yard split, which is how fast you are in a 10-yard area, it's a great indication of get off and how quickly you can come out of that 3-point stance and get moving. The only other player with a better 10-yard split in this class was Devontae Wyatt, who we just talked about. But Davis is doing it another 40 pounds heavier than that. It's insane. He had a 123-inch broad jump, 32-inch vertical. So he has explosiveness. And very similarly to what we've talked about with Trayvon Walker, is what was he asked to do versus what is he capable of doing? Because when you see that athleticism, you're thinking about Vita Vea, you're thinking about Chris Jones, Kenny Clark, like these explosive, big-bodied nose tackles that can actually contribute on third down as a pass rusher. Akeem Hicks, another one that comes to mind. When you're that big and that powerful off the ball, it's almost impossible for someone to block you. But the thing is, he didn't do it at Georgia. There's so many of these guys that it's like that. Trayvon Walker, the linebackers suffered from it. I think even Lewis Cine was asked to just play a conservative role over the top. They had this remarkable defense, but on an individual level, they didn't really allow any of these guys to show off their full capabilities. And in Jordan Davis's case, he had 6 pressures, I think. Just give me 1 second to pull up his PFF profile. Now, I'm not making my whole eval off of PFF here, but it does work as a complementary argument here. Sorry, 1 second. But yeah, they didn't ask him really to be a pass rusher, both in scheme when he was out there, because he was eating up double teams and standing up, basically, be a run defender first. And they would even take him off the field as well a ton on third downs because they had all these other guys. So I think he only played, I heard this, is he only played 15% of third downs that were longer than 4 yards. So that really tells you everything you need to know. Okay, he had 14 pressures in his final season, 3 sacks, pass rush grade of 69. He just literally didn't rush the passer, is what I'm saying. They took him off the field, And when he was out there, he showed some flashes, but nothing too promising. The hope is that you can fine tune him to get after the quarterback and push the pocket. And I think that's more likely than not that he's going to be able to do that. He is one of the most remarkable athletes we've ever seen from a testing perspective. I think it's worth the risk. I love him going somewhere where he can be used as a nose tackle, a run defender early, and he has good mentors around him to work on that pass rushing skill set. So you look at like Baltimore with Calais Campbell next to him. I love him in like Arizona with J.J. Watt, the Eagles with Fletcher Cox. Like, his potential's off the charts, absolutely. But there's a chance that there's a reason they were taking him off the field, and he just isn't, he isn't able to show that crazy athletic juice off the ball that he did at his workout. So that's Jordan Davis. True first round grade for Davis. I have a first to a second round grade on Devontae Wyatt, first to a second on Travis Jones, 2 to a 3 on Perion Winfrey, a 3 to a 4 on Neil Farrell, 3 to a 4 on Fedarian Mathis as well, a 4th round on DeMarvin Leal, 4th to a 5th round grade on Haskell Garrett, 4th to a 5th round grade on Matthew Butler, and then a 5th to a 6th round grade on Christopher Hinton. So there are my top 10 interior and offensive linemen and defensive linemen. A reminder, you can see what I think about every player in this class. We got another 23 interior defensive linemen, another 31 offensive linemen that you can go and see my full evals on, their full strengths, weaknesses. You'll get even more information on the players we just talked about as well. That is all on my Patreon. Again, we got 7-round mock drafts, film breakdowns, the full TFG Draft Insider package available there. You'll support the show in the process. And next up, we're going to get into another perk you can get on Patreon there with our mailbag and answer some questions for the show. I'm going to take a quick break, and then we'll come back and do the Patreon mailbag. And we are back with the Patreon mailbag. So just $1 a month on Patreon, you can get access to submit questions for the show. We've been able to get through all of them to this point, but so many questions coming in. At some point, I might need to pick and choose these a little bit, pick and choose my favorites, but let's try and bang these all out. If you want to submit questions, send them through the DMs on Patreon. I've seen some of you guys post to the creator page. I will not see them if you post them to the creator page, so please send them via DMs in the Patreon. And some of these are a little bit dated. It's been 3 weeks since I've been able to get into the mailbag, so some of these may be a little bit dated. But this is from Leo all the way back on March 30th. Who's the most underrated front office in the league to me? I'm going to go with the LA Chargers. I think they, in general, draft really well. I usually agree with their free agent usage. They tend to get criticized for being cheap, and I just don't see it, especially over the last 5 years or so. I think they've built some really good teams. Okay, from Edward Green, is Justin Herbert a top 5 QB right now? Well, you got Rodgers, Mahomes, no particular order. Rodgers, Mahomes, Allen's ahead of him. I think he's better than Russ. Deshaun Watson, I think I would take Herbert just because we haven't seen Watson play in a year, new team, but that's close. I personally think Burrow's better. I just do. I love the big plays that Herbert makes, but I've talked about that a lot. I think Burrow is a more systematic player, a little bit better, eluding pressure and extending plays and stuff. Not that Herbert doesn't do that, but I do think Burrow's a step above Herbert. I think he's better than Kyler. I'm just kind of going through divisions. It's been a while since I ranked quarterbacks, so Brady coming back. Are you taking Herbert over Brady at 46 years old? I think you probably are, but Brady was like second in MVP voting last year, so that's pretty dang close. I could see an argument either way. NFC West, I do think he's better than Stafford, though it's close. AFC, I do think he's better than Lamar. AFC East, yeah, he's better than all those guys other than Allen. South, yes. West, yeah, I mean, he's right on the fringe there, man. I think he's somewhere between 5 and 8 is probably where he's going to come in. If you have him 5th over like Brady, I think that's understandable. I don't know if I quite would or not. I can see an argument for him over Burrow as well, but that's tough. That's a tough one to answer. From Skylar, so every year I look forward to the My Guys video. I was curious off the top of your head if there were any prospects from previous videos that exceeded my expectations in their first couple of years, and any that were disappointing. Well, that would have to be like a whole research thing to go back, kind of look. You know what? Let's have some fun. If you guys can give me a second here, let's look up my guys last year. Franchise Guy 2021 my guys. Let's do a little on the fly review here. Oh shoot, it was in a podcast format, so I don't know if I'm gonna be able to do this. I didn't have any graphics. Shoot. Okay, well, this is going to be a little harder than I thought. But I do remember DJ Chark was a not my guy like 2 years ago, 3 years ago, even 4 years ago. I don't know. I did not think he was going to be good. It was super stiff, wasn't great in contested situations at LSU, and really proved me wrong early on in his LSU career. Obviously, Justin Herbert proved me wrong. Those are a couple that come to my mind. And someone that was disappointing, I guess, Matt Parrott out of UConn. I thought was going to be a really good offensive tackle. He has not come along for the Giants, so that is, I guess, a couple of incorrect spots there. From Nick, I can't help but feel like the Detroit Lions will look to take a cornerback with either pick 32 or 34. Okudah has been disappointing, and he's from an old regime. Do you agree? Which cornerback would be a good fit in Detroit? Based on your recent cornerbacks video, seems like Kyler Gordon would slide right in and outperform Okudah. Yeah, Kyler Gordon would be a good fit. I think he can go press man and play in there. He also would give you slot versatility. If Okudah played well, you've got Oruwariye outside, so I like that. I love Zion McCollum. Getting the coaching there with Aaron Glenn would be awesome. I wouldn't be stunned if Kyer Elam was there at the 32nd pick. I think he would fit kind of the man coverage Saints background that they like. So there's 3 names that I think could be a good slot for the Lions. From Nick, first, love your work. Want to thank you for all the great content. You're welcome. Just recently became a patron to learn more about scouting. Well, you're just talking me up, but thank you, Nick. What would be some advice that you could give for fans that want to begin the draft scouting process but don't know where to start? What traits, physicals, tape are you looking for, and where would be the best place to start? Well, that's like a whole video's worth of stuff. I would say check out Caddy's Cut-Ups on Patreon. You can get some all 22 video from there. It sounds like you're looking for a place to watch some footage. Man, I'll just run through each. How about I just run through each position and say one little thing to look for? Quarterback, look at their eyes. Do their eyes go to the safety first? Do their hips mirror their eyes, or are their hips lagging behind? That can hurt accuracy. There's a couple things to look at there. Running back, whatever. Wide receiver, I would say I like to look for snap in their routes at the top of their breaks. Do they lose? Is there wasted movement in their routes? Do they change direction easily? Do they shake D-backs off when they break at the top of their routes? Tight ends, similarly, or how about for tight end, do they use their arms to subtly push off at the top of their routes is a good way for them to create separation. Offensive tackle, kick slide technique, foot speed, really important. Offensive guard, how powerful are their hands when they land them? Same thing for center. Do they stick those hands inside and create pop and disorient the defensive lineman? That's usually a sign of something pretty special. That's something that stood out for me with Zion. Not a whole lot of guys have that ability to just stick dudes. Edge. There's a lot of stuff to look for edge. Yeah, edge is tough because every edge is so different. But if he's a powerful guy, like, is he bull rushing a guy, or is he just winning with like effort as the play goes on? Like, is it a situation where, like, Kingsley Enagbare, for example, he just keeps working to the quarterback and eventually gets sacks and pressures, but at no point is he like setting up speed and like bull rushing a dude and dominating a rep, as opposed to, like Jermaine Johnson's able to like overwhelm dudes with power. Defensive tackle. What do I look for at D tackle? There's a lot of different stuff. I would say, like, how well do they hold their ground against the run? Like, when someone's working down to them, are they giving up a lot of ground, or are they holding their lane and kind of forcing the running back to bump into them and bounce out? That's a good sign of a good run defender. Linebacker, linebackers, I got an easy one. Do they move and turn their head in zone coverage, or are they just staring at the quarterback the whole time? Because if they're moving and turning their head, it means they're comfortable, feeling out the play. That's a huge deal. Corner, I just like to see how they move, really is the biggest thing for me. Speed, hip fluidity when they're turning and running. And man, safety's like impossible, man. There's so much different stuff that a safety does and different types of safeties. So I hope some of that stuff helps answer your question. But you could write a book for each position of how you scout different groups. It just comes with time and watching a lot of positions and comparing guys to different guys. It's a big long process, but I hope I was able to provide some good information there. Dylan asks, as someone who's very high on Carson Strong, why do you think he's consistently left out of the top 5 quarterback conversations in this year's draft? Simple. Injuries. It's very serious stuff with his knees. Scaring teams off. From Jakar, I want my Patriots to draft another receiver in the first 2 rounds. Do you think it would be better to draft a receiver at 21 and possibly pick Zion McCollum at 54, or to draft like Booth or McDuffie at 21 and hopefully someone like Watson, Pickens, or Dotson falls to 54? If you can guarantee you get McCollum at 54, I would draft a receiver in the first, but I think there's more depth at receiver in the second than there is corner. I, again, don't think a lot of those mock draft simulators are where the NFL is going to be at on Zion McCollum. You just can't find guys with those physical traits. So I would lean towards drafting the corner in the first and going receiver in the second, because I think it's a more likely situation to get 2 good players. But if you can guarantee you get McCollum in the second, I'd love to see him get coached up by the Patriots. Mailbag question from Keyz. Just watched your film room on Kyle Hamilton. What are your thoughts on him potentially converting to play linebacker? Yeah, I think we love to spend time on making sure we know what these guys' positional designations are. I think if you draft Kyle Hamilton, you're using him as a big nickel, weak side linebacker, overhang defender. I don't think he's a deep safety, so I think, yeah, if you're a 4-3 team, he can be a weak side linebacker, and it really doesn't make a huge difference. Like, he's going to play inside the box. He's going to play on tight ends when they're flexed out. He's going to play that kind of just overhang position is what he is. And with nickel as popular as it is these days, he's going to be a linebacker whether assuming someone doesn't try to stick him at free safety. But, I do think whatever his positional designation is, he's going to be a linebacker. Like, there's safeties in the league that are more linebacker than safety. I think he's going to be in that category. From Jacob, what's your beef with donuts? I'm biased because donuts tend to give me a really bad stomach ache. I don't know. My body just doesn't agree with donuts. So I'm very biased against it. I do have a buddy that's a big donuts guy. He's going to take me to some of the better donut spots around Minneapolis and hopefully change my opinion. And hopefully my stomach agrees with him. But I'm a egg, sausage, breakfast sandwich, or omelet. Like, give me a good American breakfast over a donut to start my morning, I guess. I'd rather have dessert at the end of my day than load up on sugar to start my day. From Finn, do you think there is a chance Malik Willis falls to the Steelers? There's a chance. There is a chance. I'd say 5 to 10%. If it's going to start with Carolina passing on a quarterback, that's going to be big at 6. There's not a whole lot of teams looking for quarterbacks right now, but teams are going to like the developmental upside of him. Would a team like Minnesota pass on him, for example? Once he starts getting into the teens, you get into all these scenarios that we haven't really thought about. Like, would the Saints take him? Would Washington take him? Like, I don't know. There's a chance that all those teams just don't like him. I think a lot of people agree he's a second-round prospect. Some people think he's a top 10 prospect. So I do think if they want him, they should trade up for him because you're not going to have to sell the farm to go get him. From Donovan, is Kyle Hamilton comparable to Cam Chancellor? I don't think so. I think Cam Chancellor was a much more physical run defender, but I guess they're comparable in role. Like we talked about, like Cam Chancellor was a linebacker for the Seahawks most of the time. Played a little bit of deep safety occasionally, but in role, yes. I would be stunned if Kyle Hamilton became the player that Cam Chancellor was. Mailbag question. Are you mentally prepared for Zion Johnson to become a Buccaneer? Yeah, I've been mentally prepared for Tom Brady to get whatever he wants and for things to magically fall in his lap for a long time. So it'll probably happen right before they sign Julio Jones and he goes on for a perfectly healthy season in his prime for $800 next year. From Josh, what do you think of this hot take? The Falcons should try drafting Dax Hill with their first-round pick and Jalen Petrie with their second-round pick to lock up a complimentary safety duo for the next 4 years. You got to remember they drafted the kid out of UCF last year. I don't think you can give on him quite yet, but I do like either of those guys. If they could be there in the second round, I definitely like Hill or Jalen Petrie for them, or if they traded down. But yeah, they invested pretty high last year. I think that was their first pick. Actually, no, they took Kyle Pitts and then they took the UCF kid at like 36. From Angus Crowley. My question is about the salary cap rules, specifically the increasing popularity of things like void years to abuse the cap. Things like the Saints, Rams, and Packers do. Do you think the league would consider adjusting the rules in some way to make salary cap more of a rigid limit again? The NFL still isn't as close to the NBA as far as the cap not being real, but we seem to be inching closer to it every offseason. I agree. I think that the NFL should end void years. I think it's kind of just, I don't want to say slimy. It's just sketch. Like you're writing in paper that we're going to give you all this money now, but we're going to write on a bunch of fake years. So you can sign a 1-year extension, right? Let's say, let's just take trying to think of, let's take Kevin King's extension last year for the Packers. It was technically a $5 million contract, right? 1 year, $5 million. But what they did was say, okay, actually it's a 5-year contract. And in the first year, you're only going to make $2 million. But after that first year, it is written in paper that this contract terminates, which means your base salary is literally fake money. It does not exist. That this contract is guaranteed to terminate. And then they put bonuses in those fake years, right? So a signing bonus, he gets all of that money right away up front. It's a player-friendly thing. But when that contract terminates, it says, okay, 2023, 2024, 2025, that money will be spread out in those seasons. I think it's pretty slimy. I think that term in the contracts that says that the contract terminates automatically, I think it's just a silly loophole that if you want to be a hard cap league, that's a loophole that they should get rid of. That's my own opinion. And I don't think they'll change anything about it because it helps the teams. It helps because the owners don't want to change it. The players don't want to change it. It helps everyone in the league for the most part. But if you're a fan of like a team trying to get better and compete with these teams that just are able to keep everyone, it is frustrating. From Nick, if you could pick one quarterback from this draft and take away their biggest negative trait, who would it be and why? Well, it's got to be Malik Willis, and I would take away... Would it be? Would it be Malik Willis? Yeah, probably. I was going to say Kenny Pickett's propensity to scramble early would probably make him the clear-cut best quarterback in this class. I think Willis has like 3 issues. This could be said about anybody, but if you could make Malik Willis read the field and just be an average processing quarterback, I think he'd be the best quarterback this year. But I think you could say about really any of these guys. That's the hardest thing to get at the next level is good processing. This is from Ali, if Tibbs and Sais are gone at 7 for the Giants, and we've already taken a tackle at 5, who do we select? He says, I'm a big fan of trading down in that scenario. I agree, a trade down would be nice. Stingley, I'd consider Stingley for sure. I mean, you guys know I would consider Zion Johnson, but most wouldn't. Those are probably the 2 names that I'd be looking at if you can't trade down. From Patrick Hill, not ready to give up on Samuel or Diami, but I think Washington has to prioritize getting a number 2 receiver to take some pressure off of McLaurin. That said, do you think you would think of them taking Olave at 11, provided Garrett Wilson is off the board? No, I wouldn't do that. I think that's pretty rich for Olave. Like, I think you have a pretty good chance. If you really feel like you need that number 2 receiver, I think you have a pretty good chance to use that 2nd round pick to get something close to Olave, with whether that's Pickens or Sky Moore, even Jahan Dotson. Like, it's not a terrible pick, but I think Trent McDuffie, Daxton Hill would be much better impacts for your defense. Yeah, I think Curtis Samuel and Diami Brown are really talented. They just had, freaking Taylor Heineke to work with at quarterback last year. So there's only so much you can do there. Diami's only like 22 years old too. Most people, myself included, had Diami Brown as a top 50 player last year. From Adam Bowman, I know Debo leaving the Niners is a long shot. This was, a week ago. But do you believe the Packers should be interested in trying to trade for him? I think they should flirt with the idea. I don't think they should give up, the 22nd. I think you give up the 29th pick and maybe a third. I don't think they should give up the same that Tyreek Hill got or Devontae Adams. Because you got to pay him. I think there's some question marks there. I think he's got durability concerns compared to Adams and Hill. I think he isn't as established as a true number one receiver as those guys. A lot of his production was Shanahan oriented. I think he's incredibly talented and could show even more as a receiver. But to give up a bunch of picks and then give him $25 million, given some of the question marks with him, he's not. It's not as safe trading for Debo as it was for Adams or Hill. I really do believe that. He's still awesome and worth close to it, but it depends if they get outpriced, I guess. But they should definitely be entertaining it. That's for sure. From Zach, new patron here. Thanks for signing up, Zach. Appreciate you. Watching your top 10 running backs video, I was just curious on your team fits for each of them. Man, that's a tough one. I will do my top 3. I'm not going to do all 10, but I think Breece Hall to Buffalo would be incredible. They have that inside zone heavy offense. He'd be great there. Kenneth Walker is an interesting one. He can kind of fit in any system. He's not a super powerful guy, but Kenneth Walker. This is tough. Tough to find teams that need running backs, Boy. Arizona maybe. Get a speed element there because you don't have that in Connor. Could catch a lot of swing passes, be a third down target, give you some explosiveness. I'll go Arizona for Kenneth Walker, and then Pierre Strong. I'm going to go Pierre Strong to... How about Detroit? Pierre Strong to Detroit. I know you got DeAndre Swift. He's sweet, but I really, I don't like paying running backs a second contract, and I think Swift's going to be really good. I think you get him on turf where he can juke guys out behind a good offensive line where he can clear lanes. We'll go Detroit as a good fit. Probably won't take him, but from Aaron, should the Seahawks move Jamal Adams to full-time linebacker? No, they have linebackers, and they're able to get him involved in the right role as a safety. I'm not quite as much on the Jamal Adams sucks train as a lot of people. I think he played injured last year. I think he's going to be just fine as that strong safety. When they run cover 3, they're not going to have him running single high. That's Quandre Diggs. I think he can run quarters, or he can be that star kind of strong safety, and they can bring in a different safety. I don't think you just say you're a linebacker now. No. From Frosty, this is a little nuts, but do you see a case where the Lions aren't sure on any of these edge rushers at 2 and just grab a can't miss receiver in Garrett Wilson? I don't think they will, but I don't think it's crazy. I've definitely thought about it for Detroit. Can I just take a receiver here at number 2? Because Garrett Wilson's the 5th player on my board. I don't think it'd be a bad pick at all. I really doubt they do. Some of these aren't mailbag questions, so I just got to sort through some of these. If you're the Giants GM, this is from Patrick, sitting at 5 and 7, would you take an opportunity to get more 2023 picks to get Stroud or Young? Yeah, absolutely. 100%. Very similar to what the Eagles are doing. Get in on next year's quarterback class. Hedge your bets against Daniel Jones. He's also asking if my Madden rosters are going to come to PC. No, unfortunately, don't have the time and resources for that. Dominique says, I'm new to this. I don't know if this is 100% how the mailbag works, but here we go. Yes, Dominique, you're in the right place. Thank you for the question. He's from Vienna, Austria, coaches American football. So shout out to Austrian football. Dominique, how's it going? As Raymond is from Vienna, like me, I am most interested in him. He actually played for my rivals. So do you consider his short experience at the offensive tackle position as something negative or positive? I hear many people saying that he can prove so much, but I'm afraid he could have a problem reaching his college level due to his inexperience at the position. I guess he can at least become a solid backup if he just plays around his college level in the NFL. As I know, he started as playing a wide receiver, became a tight end, and transitioned to college OT, which I consider more of a problem than a benefit. Yeah, I think it's actually pretty simple. I think you understand that he's not as technically polished. You saw a lot of inside moves and stuff where he wasn't stepping inside. He wasn't recognizing what was coming. He didn't step inside. There's going to be a learning curve there. I don't think he's going to be a excellent pass protector as a rookie. But I also think because it's just technical stuff with him, you definitely say, wow, look at the improvement in 2 years at this position. He's already locking dudes down. He got better game after game. You definitely can look at that as a positive as well and say, well, look at how much better he can get. But I think you understand, like, yeah, there's probably going to be some learning curves. Like, he's probably not going to step in and dominate. And that's kind of why he's not like a top 20, 25 pick. I think there's definitely pros and cons to it for sure. From Oscar, how good do you think the Eagles secondary would be if they took McDuffie and Dax Hill with their first 2-round picks? That would be my dream fit for the Birds. Man, that'd be sweet. You would have at least a top 15 secondary, which is coming a long way from where they've been over the last few years. I would say they were around that mark last year, though. I think you have top 10 upside if Dax Hill and Trent McDuffie really hit it early. But you've got 3 great corners. You've got Dax Hill, who I think can be a great safety, and then a good safety next to him and Anthony Harris. Like, yeah, that's filling out that secondary in a really well thought out way. I love the idea of the Eagles getting one of those good defensive backs. This is funny. Kellen just says, I just subscribed to your Patreon and just wanted to say that I started off watching your channel out of pure hate since you would always rank the Titans so low. But as I watched your content more, I realized I really like you. Keep up the great work. Thank you, Kellen. Thank you. It was never out of disdain against the Titans. For a long time, I was right about doubting them. And to a degree, they still haven't really taken that true next step. But not to dump on your Titans. They've done some really nice stuff. From Raf Floors, how would you feel if a team like the Giants, we got a lot of Giants questions. How would you feel if a team like the Giants at pick 7 would take Malik Willis to be their long-term solution with Jones starting? I mean, you guys know how I feel about Malik Willis. I don't think he's a great prospect. I think he's a really athletic guy. He's got a strong arm and a boatload of work to do. In theory, it's similar to what they had developmental-wise with Josh Allen, but I mean, I love Josh Allen coming out. I don't think Malik Willis is that good of a prospect. I think you use that pick to help Daniel Jones. And if he can't take a huge step mentally, then you look at next year's quarterback class. I think it's such a short-sighted, impatient decision to draft Malik Willis. It's like, well, he's got the highest upside of this group. Like, what year has come along where someone doesn't end up convincing themselves of that. Like, who's to say next year the fourth quarterback in the class isn't as good as Malik Willis? I think that's actually pretty damn likely that the fourth quarterback next year is about comparable prospect to Malik Willis. So I think you've got to trust your evaluation and say, this isn't the year. This isn't the year. We got a valuable pick here. We gotta not light it on fire. And of course, there's that 10% chance Malik Willis turns into a superstar and he's the next Josh Allen for Brian Daboll, but I just do not think that happens. I don't know if this is a question. I think it is. I'm a huge 49ers fan. This is from Chris. The trade request has definitely been annoying. Rappaport reported that the trade request was made a week ago, yet the 49ers requested 0 visits with players projected to go in the first round, and one that might be an easy second, Brisker, early second. Today is the last day for visits. This seems to indicate that even if the 49ers want to trade him, it may not be before the draft or for current draft capital. What do you think that the trade package might look like then? Wow. If they can't get picks this year for Debo, that sucks. I disagree. I think they will get it done. I don't know if the visits has too much to do with their decision making here. But you seem more dialed in than me, but that just doesn't really make sense to me. I think if they're not getting picks this year, you might as well call his bluff and say, well, fine. You don't want a contract here? That's fine. But you're under contract next year, Debo, so sorry. You're either playing or we're going to find the crap out of you and you're going to get another year of eligibility for us next year. I mean, they could potentially play hardball. No one's really done that with this new era of player empowerment, though. But, yeah, I mean, you're probably looking at, first, second round pick next year, or even a pair of firsts over the next 2 years. I don't know. If you're getting future draft capital, I think they end up, for me, the Jets make the most sense. The Jets have the money to pay him. They've been looking for a number one receiver. They need to help Zach Wilson. It's a scheme that they know works for him. With all the 49ers connections there. And I think the number 10 pick and Elijah Moore would make a lot of sense. The Niners can get a receiver and a top 10 pick. That to me is what would really make sense, but it's definitely a frustrating situation if you're a Niners fan. Okay, from Tanner, what move do you think was a bigger loss? Packers losing Adams or Chiefs losing Hill? I think they're pretty even. I think Hill gave a little bit more of a irreplaceable skill set with his speed and playmaking after the catch and all that stuff. Whereas Adams, it's like they don't have anybody else. I think it's pretty even. Personally, I think both teams have elite quarterbacks that should be able to get next man up to turn into a very productive weapon for them. I would say they're even. I'm not comfortable siding one way or the other. Last question here from Luke. In your recent video about best fits and draft fits for each team, you said that you thought about Matt Corral would be a great pick for the Seahawks in the second. I've seen people mock this for a long time, and I really just do not understand it. It seems to me that drafting a QB is setting them up for a long period in purgatory unless they hit. See, that's where I disagree. I think there's an added, if you draft Kenny Pickett in the first round or you draft Desmond Ridder in the first round, who are not high upside players, right? We think they could be decent quarterbacks, but they don't have big times arms, or they aren't these amazing athletes or any of this stuff. You draft them in the first, you're committing to him as your starter. You're committing to him like Daniel Jones for an extended period of time. If you take Matt Corral in the second round, you're not committing to anything. You really aren't. He's raw. So if he sucks, you can eat it and move on. Just as the Panthers moved on from Jimmy Clausen, who they'd spent a second round pick. The Browns drafted Baker Mayfield after having Deshaun Kaiser. The Broncos were in a position to move on from Drew Lock at any point, and they never committed to him. I think there is a different message you're sending when you draft a quarterback in the second as opposed to the first. I think that's a good spot where the upside of a Matt Corral, which is higher than Ritter and Pickett because he's got a stronger arm, he's mobile, he's got a rapid release, he's a playmaker. The upside of Corral in the second is worth it for me because you can bust at that pick just as much at any other position. The probability might be a little bit higher at other positions, but you're not passing up as much of a sure thing like you are in the first round as you are in the second round. So for me, it's quarterback's the most important position in sports. The Seahawks are trying to win. They don't expect to have a top 10 pick next year. I frankly don't know if they will or not, but I don't think they're going to be as bad as people realize. And as much as we crap on Matt Corral, he's got a lot of talent. There's upside there, and I think he's got playmakers and a good system around him in Seattle. I think it'd be a really good spot for him. So I don't know if I sold you on it or not, but I do think it's worth the risk. That was an awesome mailbag portion. Thank you to my patrons for some excellent questions. Great podcast in general. I really hope you guys enjoyed listening. Please do leave a review if you're listening to the audio version of this bad boy. And we'll see you guys. What do I got scheduled next? Potentially going to have my guys and my sleepers video up tomorrow. Could be rescheduling that for next week. But either that or our next mock draft, our last What I Would Do mock draft, is going to be up on Saturday morning for sure. So looking forward to all that. Of course, draft next week. Thank you for listening. We'll see you later. Peace out.